Hey everyone, and a very warm welcome. If you're getting ready for the TKT or you're just looking to level up your teaching skills, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to dive deep into a super important area of language teaching, Lexis.
All right, so let me ask you something right off the bat. For years, we've all talked about teaching vocabulary. But what if I told you that just focusing on single words is kind of like trying to build a house one brick at a time without using any mortar to hold it together? The real magic, the real learning, happens when we start to understand all the connections, the patterns, and the context that truly bring a language to life.
So that brings us to our first really big idea. To be a super effective language teacher, we've got to make a little shift in our thinking, from just vocabulary to this bigger concept of Lexis. But what on earth is the difference? Let's break it down.
Think of Lexis as the whole shebang. It's not just single words like tree. It also includes phrasal verbs, like look after, and even whole chunks of language that we use as one single piece, like by the way. So teaching Lexis means we're teaching the language how it's actually used in these natural, easy-to-remember chunks.
Okay, so once we've got a lexical item, our next job is to teach its meaning. And this is where things get really interesting, because meaning isn't just one flat thing. Nope, it's got layers. Let's peel back 3 of the most important layers our students really need to get.
And to do this, we're going to use a really simple word, tree. Seems totally straightforward, right? But it's actually the perfect example to show you these different layers of meaning.
First up, you've got what's called denotation. Now, this is just the core literal meaning, the definition you'd find if you looked it up in a dictionary. It's the concrete, objective foundation of what the word means. A tree is a tree. Simple as that.
But language is so much more creative than that, isn't it? And this is a perfect example. A word can also have a figurative meaning, which is when we use it in a more imaginative or symbolic way. So a family tree obviously isn't a plant, it's a metaphor. Helping our students get a handle on these figurative uses is absolutely key to unlocking a much deeper understanding of English. And finally, we have meaning from context. Now, this one is a vital skill for our learners because they're not always going to have a dictionary handy. In a sentence like this, even if a student has no idea what a van is, the words drove and parked are huge clues. Teaching students to hunt for these clues empowers them to become way more independent as readers and listeners. So, understanding meaning is one piece of the puzzle, but how are new words actually made? Let's take a look at the architecture of words. See, by showing our students how words are put together, we're giving them the tools to figure out unfamiliar language all by themselves.
The most basic building blocks are what we call affixes. You've got prefixes, which we stick on the beginning of a word. They often change the meaning, like how un turns clear into its exact opposite. Then you have suffixes, which go on the end. They can change what the word does, like how ness turns the adjective good into the noun goodness.
Another really common way we build words is by making compounds. It sounds fancy, but really we just stick 2 words together to create a brand new one with its own meaning. A flower shop isn't just a shop, it's a specific kind. Same for headache. It's a simple trick, but it's everywhere in English. Okay, now this next idea is an absolute game changer when it comes to fluency. I'm talking about collocations. These are basically words that are best friends. They hang out together all the time. It's not about grammar rules, it's just that they sound right to people who speak the language. And for our students, learning these pairs is a massive shortcut to sounding more natural. Seriously, think about it. We make a plan, right? We don't do a plan. We do the shopping. We talk about heavy rain, not strong rain. These partnerships are totally predictable for native speakers, and teaching them directly helps our students get away from translating word for word and start communicating authentically. So, we've looked at what words mean and how they're built. The final piece of this big Lexis puzzle is understanding how words relate to each other. Because when we teach vocabulary in logical groups, we're actually helping our students' brains store the information and find it again later much more easily. The most basic relationships, of course, are synonyms and antonyms, words with similar or opposite meanings. Teaching these together just makes sense. It creates these really clear connections in the mind. It's so much more effective than just teaching a random list of words.
But an even more powerful tool is something called a lexical set. And this is simply a group of words that all belong to the same topic. The human brain just loves to categorize things, right? So by presenting vocabulary in these neat,
thematic groups, we're working with our students' natural learning processes, not fighting against them.
And here are some classic examples you can probably use in your class tomorrow. I mean, when you teach the word table, it makes perfect sense to also teach chair, sofa, and bed at the same time. You're helping students build a whole network of meaning, like a mental map of the topic, and that is way more memorable than a bunch of isolated facts.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here. What Lexis is, all the layers of meaning, how words are built and grouped. But what does all of this actually mean for you in your classroom on a Tuesday morning? Why does this little shift in perspective matter so much?
Well, it matters because this move from teaching just vocabulary to teaching Lexis can completely transform how you teach, and more importantly, how much your students learn and grow.
See, when you teach Lexis, you're not just handing out lists for them to memorize. You're teaching them language in memorable chunks, like collocations. You're giving them real skills, like guessing meaning from context. At the end of the day, you're building a foundation for real fluency, so they can communicate their ideas effectively, not just create grammatically perfect sentences that sound, well, a little weird.
And that's our goal as teachers, isn't it? That's the bottom line. We don't want our students to just know a bunch of English words. We want them to be able to use English with confidence and skill. And having a real understanding of Lexis is the bridge that's going to get them there. So, as we wrap things up, I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. When you're planning your next lesson, ask yourself, how can I bring in some collocations? How can I introduce a lexical set? How can I start moving beyond just single words and really begin teaching the rich, connected system of Lexis? Thank you so much for joining me.